allow me to paint you a picture real quick. I want you to imagine a world where you and your boys have somehow defied the odds and have all become successful scientists. Y'all made it. You're successful now. You've become a group of highly respectable and trusted individuals. Everyone is so qualified that y'all have been sent to a remote American outpost located in the middle of Antarctica, assigned to perform general maintenance at a research facility. Sounds like hard work, yeah?
No.
Because you are a part of a Swiss Army crew. You got a pilot, a mechanic and his assistant, a biologist and his assistant, the commander, a physician, geophysicist, meteorologist, a cook, a radio operator, hell, you even got a dog whisperer. The problem is, you're trapped in this Arctic facility and are currently under attack by a parasitic alien that can take the shape of any one of your fellow crewmates. This is the situation our main character, MacCready, is forced to confront. The alien they're dealing with assimilates its victims, perfectly copying both the appearance and behavior of anyone it infects. So how do they survive? How do they figure out who's been compromised? How did they let this happen in the first place? MacCready pours himself a stiff whiskey on ice and is about to run up a game of chess against the CPU. His ELO rating has never been lower, and he loses almost immediately. Not only is Mac a sore loser, he just wasted a full glass of whiskey, ruined a perfectly good computer, and probably burnt his fingers in the process. But he's not tripping about that, because shortly after, the peaceful day is interrupted by the sound of spinning helicopter blades, gunfire, and explosions. This sudden commotion was caused by the station's Norwegian neighbors from down the road. The Norwegians are chasing this runaway husky, and it's clear from their efforts that they have no intention of giving it just a nice pat on the head. You cannot make this shit up. I have never seen a worse throw attempt in my life. Someone in the American crew must have lied on that resume about being fluent in Norwegian, because if anyone knew what this guy was saying, chances are the events in this film could have been avoided altogether. The alien they're dealing with can take the shape of humans, yes, but it can also take the shape of dogs, which would explain why the Norwegians are sparing no expense at putting this thing down. Alien or not, this is still a very good boy. The Norwegian notices that the alien dog looks hungry, so he goes to offer it some food, and the Americans recognize how generous he's being and in return give him $1 million. Given the knowledge of the dog's true identity died with the Norwegian, the Americans unknowingly invite the alien into their home, officially kicking off the main conflict of the film. That was quite an eventful day, but it didn't cause any immediate concern, so some of the crew members unwind with some recreational activities like pool, cards, and recreational activities. Meteorologist Bennings keeps slow rolling in their poker game, and in retaliation, the newly acquired husky takes a little nibble of his leg. Dog handler Clark is then instructed to lead the husky into the kennel room and calmly secure it inside one of the cages alongside the other sled dogs. Package secured, Clark turns off the lights and heads back to the station's rec room. We've already established that the dog is the alien in disguise, and is not pussy. It shamelessly reveals its hand to all the other huskies in the cage and begins to transform into a flesh-covered, tentacle-having, bile-spitting, complete abomination of a creature. Biting through steel wire is an appropriate response to seeing this thing. Clark had only stepped away for about 5 seconds before shit hit the fan. He could still hear the commotion from just outside, so he turned and headed back to the kennel. He could have sworn he never put a grotesquely mutated pile of alien dog in that cage, and he calls the rest of the crew over to double check what he's seeing. At the sight of this creature, they quickly begin unloading clips, and the crew's chief mechanic, Childs, marches into the room with a flamethrower and finishes the job by bathing it in fire. The flames seemingly put down the creature, and for now, the situation is under control. This buys the crew enough time for their microbiologist, Blair, to perform an autopsy on the creature's remains.
Here's an organism that imitates other life forms, and it imitates them perfectly. Absorb them.
Blair just touched this thing with his pencil, and then immediately put said pencil up to his lips. He is definitely the type of guy to eat crumbs off a table before the food he ordered even arrives. This autopsy is when the crew is first introduced to the fact that the creature is capable of imitation, and this discovery plants the thought in Blair's mind that it may also be capable of imitating the crew themselves.
How long were you alone with that dog?
I don't know, an hour and a half maybe. What the hell are you looking at me like that for?
His suspicions are further cemented when a simulation diagnostic predicts a 75% probability that one of the crew is already infected, and warns that even if a single particle of the alien escapes the station, global assimilation will be all but inevitable. These are 1982 computers we're talking about, and Blair just basically punches in a few buzzwords to get that metric, so it's hard to fully trust how reliable that number really is.
Will Ferrell played the lead character MacReady in John Carpenter's horror film, but some argue that it was really Jim Carrey.
Regardless, it's enough for Blair to go ballistic, and he sabotages their helicopter and destroys their communications. Now that wasn't very nice, Blair. It's solitary confinement for you. Bennings and the radio operator, Windows, are instructed to lock the remains of the alien in a private room for safety. Windows leaves Bennings alone with the body to retrieve the keys to the room.
You got the keys? Get them from Gary. I want to get some stuff out of here.
And when he returns a short time later, he dramatically slow turns to see Bennings wrapped up in the tentacles of the Thing. The crew chase him out into the snow, where it's revealed that this is actually the Thing in the process of cloning Bennings. Bennings has been eliminated. It's important to note here that the crew begins associating torn clothing with possible infection. During Bennings' assimilation, pieces of his clothes were found ripped and left behind, likely the result of the alien violently tearing through the fabric as it attacked Bennings. This is one possible clue as to who might be imitated, but it's far from definitive, and the crew need a more reliable way to know for certain who is still human and who isn't. The station's physician, Dr. Copper, proposes testing the crew for infection by comparing their blood to uncontaminated samples that are kept in storage. But when they discover the blood supply has been mysteriously destroyed, suspicion spreads quickly, and the crew begins pointing fingers over who could have sabotaged it.
Me? Oh, come on. That keyring of yours is always hooked to your belt.
Since the station's commander, Gary, is the only one who routinely keeps the key to the blood locker, suspicion falls directly on him. The men lose faith in his leadership, and MacReady steps in to take command in his place. Under new management, Dr. Copper's assistant, Fuchs, suddenly goes missing after following a mysterious figure during a power outage. MacReady, Windows, and the facility's cook, Knowles, head outside to look for Fuchs and quickly stumble upon his burnt corpse. Cause of death? Immolation. How'd this happen? We can't say for certain. In this moment, MacReady notices that his room lights are on, and the electric bill is high enough as it is, so he and Knowles go up to turn it off while Windows reports their findings to the others. Almost an hour later, Knowles returns to the station alone and reports that he ditched MacReady after discovering some of his ripped up clothing stashed away in his room. His proof, combined with his heightened state of panic, is enough to convince several of the crew that MacReady himself may be the Thing. MacReady is fully aware of the suspicion surrounding him, and he re-enters the station through the supply room and makes it very clear that if anyone gets near him, he'll blow himself up along with the entire station. Honestly, this is a really solid play. Up until this point, the Thing's behavior has been driven by one core instinct: survival through concealment. It blends in, avoids drawing attention, and acts in ways to preserve its ability to spread. Threatening to destroy yourself doesn't align with that goal. We can only speculate, but this line of thinking may also apply to what happened to Fuchs. The body they discover is unmistakably human, an immediate indication that he wasn't the Thing at the moment of his death. If MacReady were the Thing here, self-destruction would truly be the ultimate bluff. Before the party can kick off, geophysicist Norris suddenly appears to suffer a heart attack due to the stress of the situation. This interruption doesn't clear MacReady of his suspicion, but it does divide the crew's attention, as Norris is laid on a gurney and given chest compressions. I'm not the doctor here, but Copper straight up karate chops Norris in the chest. Something tells me he didn't learn that one in medical school. It's clear that Clark does not trust MacReady one single bit, and he's gearing up to charge him with a scalpel, but before he gets the chance, Dr. Copper is now dead, and Norris turns into one of those metal head massagers, but not the good kind. They flame the thing down, and a part of it attempts to crab walk away, but they flame that too. That was a close call. It's time to really lock this shit down. Unless the crew takes action, they'll fall one by one until nobody is left, and then the whole world will soon follow. It's important that everyone remain calm and try to... Clark was ready to jump MacReady with a scalpel just a second ago. Not sure why he settled for a sucker punch here, but whatever. MacReady instructs Windows to tie up the remaining survivors and collect blood samples from each of them. The idea here is to test the blood samples from each crew member with a heated piece of wire.
You see, when a man bleeds, it's just tissue. No blood from one of you things won't obey when it's attacked. It'll try and survive, crawl away from a hot needle, say.
One by one, each sample is suspensefully tested, including Clark and Dr. Copper's. Turns out, both of them were human. MacReady, you just killed an innocent man. Well, I mean, it was self-defense. Everyone passes the test. Except for Palmer, who isn't looking suspicious at all. We never see when Palmer did get infected. It's possible he was assimilated by the dog thing at the beginning, or even by the Norris thing. Either way, he's wildin' right now. Windows is literally equipped with a flamethrower, but he's all like, I can fix him. But the thing latches onto his whole head and flails him around like a wet paper towel. This is so disrespectful. He gets tossed aside, and MacReady flames down the creature. Rest in peace, Windows. This demonstration proved that MacReady's blood test does work, and at this moment, everyone in the room is confirmed human. With the test validated, MacReady, Gary, and Knowles head out to administer it to Blair, leaving Childs alone to guard the station. However, when they get to the room they locked Blair in, he's nowhere to be found. What they do find is a little hidey hole under the floorboards, concealing a tunnel that leads to a partially constructed spaceship. It's pretty safe to assume that at this point, Blair has been assimilated. While this is happening, they notice Childs abandoning his post, walking outside in the cold for some unknown reason. And just a second later, the power to the station goes out. Well, that's odd. MacReady deduces that since there's no easy way out of here, the thing will more than likely try to buy its time by freezing itself in the sub-zero environment. If it can enter some sort of cryostasis, it could survive indefinitely, waiting for an unsuspecting rescue crew to uncover it, just like they had. These three survivors come to the conclusion that they are most likely not going to make it out of here alive, and the least they can do is make sure the alien can't either.
Whether we make it or not, we can't let the thing freeze again. Maybe we'll just warm things up a little around here.
They set out to accomplish this by using the remaining resources they have to blow up and set fire to the entire station. I am selfish and would violently object to this idea. The three make their way down to the generator room, where they begin setting up the last of the explosives. It's down here where we finally find Blair, popping out from behind corners to stick his fingers in Gary's mouth. Knowles must have seen or heard some sign that this was happening, because he walks off screen seemingly straight into his own assimilation, leaving MacReady alone. Boss fight time. The remains of the crew resurface in the form of a massive, grotesque amalgamation. No more invitations, no more hiding, just a big ol' fusion of everything it's assimilated. MacReady faces it in one epic final showdown, and gets some last minute shit talking in before blowing the thing to pieces along with whatever remains from the station. Problem solved. Right? MacReady is wiped after everything he just went through, and there isn't even a warm shack left to retreat to. All he can do now is sit by the flames given off by the facility, soaking in what little heat they offer against the endless cold. If the crew were still alive, I'm sure they would be thankful for MacReady's efforts and his great leadership. Speaking of survivors, Childs, where the fuck have you been? When MacReady questions him, Childs claims he thought he saw Blair and went out into the snow to follow him, only to lose his bearings and get lost in the storm. He comments that the fire will eventually burn out and asks MacReady what their next course of action should be.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while.
The two men sit in silence for just a moment before MacReady hands Childs a bottle of J&B whiskey. Childs takes a sip, and MacReady lets out a quiet chuckle as the camera cuts to a wide shot of the burning facility before the movie comes to a close. It's an understated ending for sure, but that small laugh from MacReady has fueled one of the most interesting theories surrounding this film. The entire film is built on paranoia and the fragile nature of trust, so much so that the final scene naturally forces us to question whether either of these men is still human. Throughout the film, we learn that the Thing isn't just a mindless creature. It's very strategic. It plants evidence to frame others, it picks its form strategically, and it destroys the blood supply to prevent testing after sneaking the storage keys. A little side note here, the crew argue how the keys could have fallen into the hands of the Thing, but we actually know how when we hear Windows drop them after seeing Bennings in the process of being assimilated. These are all calculated moves, almost human in their execution. The reason it comes off this way is due to director John Carpenter's approach on set.
Now, we had big discussions about whether you would know you were the Thing.
Right. I
if
remember
you got imitated.
It got so deep as you thought about it. You get more and more into it, and then finally you realized you couldn't ever possibly figure out. We didn't know whether we would know whether we had been taken over, because it takes you over so perfectly.
The Thing is good at what it does. It doesn't just survive, it schemes. Anyway, both MacReady and Childs have moments where they have been absent from the screen. Moments where assimilation could have happened without us even seeing it. In a story that repeatedly proves the audience doesn't get to witness every transformation, those gaps matter. While MacReady, Gary, and Knowles are checking on Blair, Childs abandons his post in the station and quietly wanders out into the snow without even telling anybody. His explanation for this later on is so sketchy considering all that's happened.
I don't know, man. You've been seeming sus lately.
If he encountered Blair and Blair had been assimilated, that off-screen moment would have been the perfect opportunity for the Thing to copy him. When we do finally see Childs again, he emerges from the darkness like a supervillain, in contrast to MacReady, who sits near the bright warmth of the flames. Speaking of flames, the lighting in this scene combined with the snow covering Childs' jacket makes it difficult to see clearly. But one of the most heavily speculated pieces of evidence supporting the idea that Childs is the Thing here is that he doesn't appear to be wearing the same jacket he had on earlier. As we previously established, victims' clothing is usually torn apart during assimilation. If Childs had a tussle with the Thing off screen, his original jacket was most likely damaged, forcing him to change in order to avoid suspicion. You can chalk it up to a continuity error or additional evidence supporting this idea, but in an earlier shot, we see a blue coat hanging on the wall behind Childs. When the camera cuts back to the same shot after he leaves, the jacket is gone. The time that passed in between these two shots could have very well been the moment that Childs was assimilated and we just didn't see it. But Childs isn't the only one we should be questioning here. MacReady has just as much damning evidence stacked against him. He disappears too from the screen several times, and is missing during some pretty key moments of the film. Perhaps most importantly, his demeanor in this final scene with Childs is strangely calm. Earlier, MacReady is adamant that the Thing will more than likely try to freeze itself and wait for a rescue team. This realization is what drives him and the others to destroy the station in the first place. Yet at the end, when it's just him and Childs left alive, his proposal is to simply sit and wait.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while?
I know who would like this idea. The alien who you just said moments ago would likely want to sit and wait for the rescue team.
We can't let the Thing freeze again.
You could argue that he's just too tired to do anything else, but that explanation doesn't entirely add up either. Again, the entire point of blowing up the outpost was to make sure the Thing couldn't survive the winter and to die trying. So for him to suddenly sit back and accept the cold without one last push just to be certain feels out of character. This is the same man who would rather burn the whole thing down than to let it beat him. Both men have motives, both have opportunities, both have unexplained absences. Which brings us back to the bottle of whiskey. What if I were to tell you it wasn't whiskey at all? As MacReady and the remaining two survivors are gearing up to burn down the facility, they arm themselves with Molotov cocktails. Green gasoline-filled bottles, very similar to that of the one MacReady hands over to Childs to drink. If we were to assume that the bottle was filled with gasoline, then of course Childs would spit that shit out. But if he were the Thing, there's a chance he might just think humans be sipping gasoline on the regular, and in turn, not react at all. It's not like it makes sense for MacReady to pull a bottle of whiskey out of thin air. At this moment, the film never shows him having access to alcohol, let alone in the ruins of the station. What it does show, however, is that he has green bottles in his possession. Bottles filled with gasoline prepared earlier as Molotov cocktails. That's why MacReady lets out a laugh here. It's not from a sense of relief, it's confirmation. This is what I personally believe to be the truth. But to play devil's advocate, let's consider that MacReady just pulled a bottle of whiskey from his inventory. John Carpenter confirmed himself on Twitter that one of these guys is in fact not who he says he is. If it's not Childs, then it's MacReady. Earlier in the film, Fuchs warns MacReady that if the thing operates like a virus, then contamination is a serious concern.
If a small particle of this thing is enough to take over an entire organism, then everyone should prepare their own meals, and I suggest we only eat out of cans.
This quick interaction very well could have served as foreshadowing for this final moment. If MacReady were the thing, offering a drink would be the perfect way to exploit that knowledge, attempting to spread itself to Childs. If that were the case, then his laugh wouldn't be from relief, nor confirmation, but rather satisfaction that the thing came out victorious.
At the end of the thing, did MacReady give Childs gasoline to drink? To reveal whether or not he was the thing.
I'm not going to tell you who's the thing at the end.
Okay.
All right,
Listen,
I'm not going to do it.
Why would you want to know?
Everyone wants to know.
No, we don't.
No.
John Carpenter is the only person on this planet who could provide definitive answers to the questions audiences have been dying to know for decades. And he's made it crystal clear he has no intention of sharing his secrets. The idea of paranoia is so important to this film, and if audiences were given absolute clarity, it would kind of undermine the whole point of the story. I think one reason the film captures paranoia so well is that Carpenter probably didn't write the story with answers in mind. In that sense, every conclusion or theory we come up with is valid. We can debate jacket colors or eye twinkles all we want, but the one thing every theory has in common is that we'll never be certain it's right. The movie is compelling on its own, yes, but Carpenter's decision to keep things ambiguous is what keeps the film alive. I mean, it's the reason we're still theorizing 4 decades later. We may never hear more from John Carpenter, but I don't think that matters. The uncertainty, the paranoia, the endless questions, that's what keeps the thing alive. Contrary to what MacReady might think, I say we should keep the thing alive, so that way we may continue theorizing, debating, and talking about it for many more years to come.